So in order to talk about the layers of the epidermis, remember that in the previous video on the cells of the epidermis, and in this video on the layers of the epidermis, we are exclusively talking about the epidermis, the very, very thin layer at the very top, the most superficial part of your skin. So for the layers of the epidermis, we're going to be starting in this picture. You can actually identify each of them, even though at first it kind of looks like there's not much to see here. In fact, you can see all the layers. So here's the dermis underneath here, which is kind of this white stuff. It's connective tissue. We'll talk about that later. The very first layer here is the deepmost layer, which is only about one cell layer thick. The next layer is superficial to this. It's about 5 to 6, 4 to 8, some number of cells thick. And then you can see these darker cells right in here. You can see that they start to darken here. And now we have a slighter, like a lighter purplish layer in here. And then we have the outermost layer. So you can actually identify all 5 layers, which I think is really cool to actually be able to see this in an actual histological slice. So the deepest layer is called the stratum basale. It is attached directly to the dermis underneath of here. It is a single layer of cells that consists of keratinocytes that are very young. They're not quite developed yet. 10 to 25% of the cells in this layer are melanocytes. There are also going to be some Merkel cells present here. The next layer up is the stratum spinosum, which again are several layers thick. The stratum spinosum appear to be web-like. They're mostly spiny appearing, and again, they're not fully developed keratinocytes yet, but it's mostly kind of younger keratinocytes. They're still living. There will be some melanocytes in this area, but this is where you're primarily going to find your dendritic cells. If you ever see an appearance of cells in here that look to be spiky, that's actually just an artifact of the fixative process. The cells themselves, while they are living, are not actually spiky, but as they are treated after fixation, they start to kind of pull away from each other, and that ends up having this spiky appearance. You actually can't really see the spiky appearance in these cells in this particular picture. The next layer up is called the stratum granulosum. The stratum granulosum is 3 to 5 cell layers thick. The keratinocytes in this region begin to flatten, toughen, and then they also secrete lipids. This is part of what allows the waterproofing, the very specific and important waterproofing that occurs in your epidermis that allows all of the fluids to remain inside of your body and fluids to remain outside of your body. Anything that is polar, hydrophilic, is going to have a hard time passing through the stratum granulosum. All right, next we have the stratum lucidum, which in your book is not actually labeled as such, but it seems to me that there's a layer in here that looks a little bit different than the other cells. It's kind of easy to see in my opinion. So this is a translucent band. You can kind of partially see through it. It looks different than other cells in the area. It's a translucent band. It's just a few cells thick. The keratinocytes in this region are clear, flat, and dead. Stratum lucidum is only found in thicker skin, like on the palms of your hand and the soles of your feet. It is not found in most skin of your body. And lastly, the outermost layer, which is the thickest, is called the stratum corneum. It actually takes up about 3/4 of the thickness of your epidermis. Not the skin, just the epidermis, 3/4 of the thickness of the epidermis. It's 15 to 20 cell layers thick. In this region, the keratinocytes are completely dead, which means that they can easily be lost without a problem. The stratum corneum is important for protection from abrasion, and again, it is still waterproof at this layer, and that comes from the lipids that were secreted in the stratum granulosum layer. So, cells start off at this layer at the stratum basale, and at this layer they are still living. They are still living, vital, and mitotic, which means they're still undergoing mitosis. Important for epithelial cells is that they undergo mitosis on a regular basis. They regenerate. And then as the cells undergo mitosis and grow in number, they start to just push outward. And so they just simply move through all of these layers over the course of their lifetime.